Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update. First part thereof for the 6th of August 2025. My goodness, time flies. We have the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them linked in the description below. We have a big uptick in a couple of categories here. First of all, 1,010 personnel lost. That's above 1,000. Pretty useful for the Ukrainians. A single tank, no troop carrying AFVs, so very low in the traditional combat assets. And we have 52 artillery systems. That's around about double the daily average. That's exceptional for the Ukrainians, I think, at this point in the war. 3 multiple launch rocket systems. That's a useful number in that category too. And 138 vehicles and fuel tanks. So ticked right back up to well over 100 in that category too. A single piece of special equipment. So a few categories spiking upwards. Tanks and AFVs, really virtually nothing. We'll look at equipment losses from Andrew Perpetua in a while. Let's look at some personnel issues first. So, UK intelligence update. Haven't seen too many of these for some time. This is from the 5th of August yesterday. Russia's likely sustained approximately 1,050,000 casualties killed and wounded since launching the full scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. 260,000 casualties in the conflict so far in 2025. The average daily Russian casualties during July 2025 was approximately 1,072, according to Ukrainian General Staff reporting. Russian casualty rates have moderately decreased month on month since March 2025, with July's average daily rate the lowest reported since April 2024. So the UK generally seeming to be in accordance with the Ukrainian General Staff here. Russia's likely sustained. So that's a UK intelligence estimate. But that number is essentially the Ukrainian number. So, like I've said to you before, I think intelligence entities from abroad won't have too much more to go on than what the Ukrainians are able to um, express themselves. That it's not like you've got UK operatives here with clipboards going around the front line, you know, putting tally charts together of the number of people they see killed. Uh, if they have faith, I think what this tells us is that they have faith that the Ukrainian general staff are being accurate, and they may have ways of checking using their own kind of satellite imagery or something. But I doubt they're going to be pouring as much time and effort into collating statistics as much as right. Do we have decent justification for believing the Ukrainian general staff, which is basically what I've been doing for the last sort of 3 years, is putting together these videos that essentially look to either confirm or disconfirm what the Ukrainian general staff are saying. We've already disconfirmed what the Russians have said. They don't particularly release figures anymore. Their figures are so absolutely fanciful. It's claiming that the Ukrainians had lost more aircraft than they had ever owned was just ridiculous. So it's physically impossible what the Russians are saying. So we've discounted the Russians, but the Ukrainians seem to be generally in the right ballpark. I can't. I very rarely comment on the actual total numbers here. Those are somewhat meaningless to me. I just look at the added numbers and see whether there is a trend, and that's when we can go to Dell's stats and see, whether there is, an uptick, downtick, where the figures fit in terms of the whole course of the war. So when it finally renders here, we can see Dell's statistics. So we'll go back to the UK intelligence update here. The moderate decreases in Russia's monthly casualty rates have occurred at the same time as Russian attacks across the front line have continued at a high operational tempo, and Russia has continued to make steady incremental gains in Donbass. I'm not wholly sure about this third bullet point because we've seen that actually the intensity of attacks has decreased recently, which would fall in line with moderate decreases in the Russian monthly casualty rate. So, yeah, I'd contest that final paragraph. But what do I know compared to the UK intelligence, right? Um, Russian soldiers, sometimes we've got to remember that these are just people sitting at computers doing their own analysis. I'm not saying I'm better at all than these people, but I think we go, oh, this intelligence entity has said this, and actually, you could have a scenario where open source intelligence activities can generate maybe on occasion. I'm not saying like usually, but there might be certain times where open source is more accurate than a national intelligence network's conclusions. Um, Not that I see myself as open source intelligence. I'm like an aggregator, but talking about actual open source intelligence, people like Andrew Perpetua and his team in Tochny, they are dealing with quite a lot of data, and I'm wondering whether US and UK intelligence will be dipping into Andrew Perpetua and his team's works, um, conclusions and data sets as much as they are looking at national data sets. It's unlikely that they're going to be producing their own data sets, I think. But anyway, so Russian soldiers, we understand, not for the first time, who have been previously exchanged in a prison swap, so they've been captured. Here's a guy from Tuva who was captured in Vovchansk in 2024. Um, it no, and surrendered in January. Sorry, so this year in January, and in June the 20th, he returned to Russia as a wounded POW, and then just a couple months later, he is now captured again. And there's another soldier, Dmitry Ivanov, there who was captured near Vovchansk in 2024 and has been exchanged since, and has been redeployed and captured again near Vovchansk again. So wow, um, two two POWs there that have been caught, exchanged, captured, and are now POWs for the second time. Here we have a thread. I'm not going to go through it, but you'll get the point of this thread fairly quickly. At least 14 seriously injured soldiers who were preparing to be invalided out of the Russian army have abruptly been declared fit, despite being on crutches and in plaster casts. Been sent to an assault squad, according to their relatives. So again, really typical story showing the desperation of the Russian armed forces. This is desperation that both armed forces are feeling, but you won't see the Ukrainians do this. Um, the advantage that the Russians have is that they don't adhere to any kind of moral prescriptions, that any kind of laws or what is good, right, and proper. They're just like, you're coming with us. And what that means is they can just keep generating numbers for their meat assaults and for their armed forces over and over and over, month after month. And they do it in really underhand ways. And of course, the Ukrainians don't want to be seen to be doing stuff like that, which is bad for PR, and as well as being, morally wrong too. And this leads to the situation where Syrskyi, yesterday, the commander in chief of the Ukrainians, said the enemy is increasing its group by 9,000. I mean, this is an absolutely staggering number. 9,000 people every month. So what that means, as far as I can work out, is that the Russians are losing. They are recruiting more than they're losing, to the tune of 9,000. Russian leadership aims to form 10 new divisions by the end of the year. So 9,000 a month they are growing their armed forces by. Two have already been created, two new divisions. Therefore, we have no other choice but to continue mobilization measures. Now, lots of people have been keen on this for some time. The analyst, someone I often dip into, says, and fast manpower has been an issue. Ukraine refuses to deal with properly. You have to get this in order now. Anyone 18 plus needs to be conscripted, trained, and armed before it's too late. I look at this as being a really complex matter. I've explained the arguments before. You have a demographic black hole in the 18 to 25 group. You've got the lowest infancy rates in birth rates in the world in Ukraine, and the highest death rates. And you need to replace those people, and you need families. So the 18 to 25 are most likely to have kids, and that's at the stage where you are training people up to have jobs that are going to add to the economy. So if you start decimating an already like incredibly problematic demographic and sending them off to war, you are setting yourselves up for a huge economic and demographic catastrophe. But on the other hand, you are fighting for the future of your country. Like, who else is gonna do it? So they're recruiting, 25 and above as much as possible. Are they doing enough there? Is the average age of the soldier going up too high? So on and so forth. My point is, this is a dilemma, classic dilemma. Is what's the least worst option? They're trying to stave off doing a full national mobilization, as are the Russians. So the Russians are doing it by other means, doing it in underhand ways, like collecting up legal and illegal immigrants around the country, attracting people from abroad with dangling a carrot in front of people and not often paying up on the carrot. So they're using a lot of underhand ways, going to prisons and collecting as many convicts as they can. The Ukrainians have done this, and they've done a good job, but they were a bit late to the party on that one, realizing that that was a good option. The Ukrainians, uh, personally, I think they need a lot of foreign fighters to help out. And I reported on that yesterday that maybe 600 a month are coming from abroad. I mean, that is what they need, as well as people from inside the country, but they have a much smaller population than the Russians. So no other choice, says Syrskyi, that Ukraine must mobilize to counter growing Russian forces. And that is going to be a headache that Zelensky will have to deal with, because now it's coming from his own man as commander in chief. No other choice but to intensify its mobilization. Now, it depends how you can define that. Is it just intensifying mobilization, or is it a mass national mobilization? Right, Andrew Perpetua's loss list here. We have the Russian losses looking much less than the Ukrainian losses, but if you look at the entire almost top 2/5 of the Ukrainian list, it is surveillance and comms equipment. So the Russians, with their videos, remember, just to remind you, not everyone watches all my videos. The Speaking to Andrew Perpetua, he says the Russians, for some weird reason, love to include on virtually all their videos some surveillance and comms equipment. Now, some of this is only like the size just bigger than a mobile phone, or like a tablet size thing, um, some kind of antenna that you'd use and take with you. They love showing that. They'll have a section on their video montages of stuff like that getting blown up. So he includes that in here for some people who are interested in surveillance comms stats. But it skews somewhat, because the Ukrainians don't bother showing that um, on their videos. It's not so important to them. They're interested in bigger pieces of kit and personnel and whatnot. So that will skew overall numbers of pieces of equipment. I would not put this pink um, stuff in a ledger uh, in the same sort of value category as most of the other equipment there. Okay, having said that, what have the Ukrainians lost? How have they lost it all? A couple of pieces of electronic warfare equipment, recovery vehicle, a Berger Panzer. So that's a German provided ARV, armored recovery vehicle, destroyed by a Vandal drone. You can see the Vandal drone still having incredible effect on equipment here. We have four UGVs again. I think you can see a lot of them. And to some degree, I wouldn't put them in the same list really as tanks, APCs, and MRAPs. But they are going to be more and more prevalent, I think, as their usage increases. We have most of the stuff here destroyed or abandoned, irretrievably lost, really. We have some three tanks, some APCs, M113s, mainly a single BSV Bandsvan S10, the Swedish articulated tracked vehicle. We've got half a dozen MRAPs, mix Bushmaster, Australian Bushmaster, um, Max Pro, and other pieces of kit. And then you're down to civilian vehicles, a lot of civilian vehicles there, and a few ATVs, buggies, and quads and whatnot. Nothing too significant on the list, though. No massively high value bits of kit. Same really for the Russians in terms of there's no air defense equipment on there. We've got a few surveillance comms and drone bits and pieces. We have a BM-21 Grad, a rocket launcher that is destroyed there. We have some D-30 damaged, towed artillery, a couple of T-72 tanks destroyed, and a few bits and pieces concerning traditional combat assets. Then we're down to trucks. And really, as per normal, a lot of the list is taken up with ATVs, all terrain vehicles, motorcycles, quads, and golf buggies. The Russians relying on them an awful lot. and then quite a few civilian vehicles. So that, I would say, is a better day for the Russians in terms of equipment losses there from Andrew Perpetua's list. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so moving on, we are going to look at some equipment losses, I guess. Saboteurs, according to the special Kherson Cat, managed to breach a Russian military facility, placing explosives on a Mi-28 attack helicopter. The 344th Army Aviation Training Center in Tojok, Tver region of Russia, was the site of this sabotage. The event occurred on June the 1st, but footage was published only just now. There were some reports of an explosion near the airbase from locals back then, though the reason was unclear at the time. So here we have the video. Of course, it comes equipped with unnecessary music, but there you go. Such is the way these things are done. So placed on the there is an issue with the video there. Placed on the helicopter, uh, the explosives, and then if we go to the video back here, that's how it kind of ends. We don't know whether there was definitely destruction of a helicopter, but I assume that a Mi-28 helicopter has been taken out. That would be useful and shows you the porous nature of these, and it shows you the explosions that were reported, etc., etc. So one assumes that the helicopters were blown up, but the porous nature of some of these air bases is not the first time that we've seen sabotage. We've seen jets set on fire and all sorts. So yeah, incredible how easy it appears to be to get through into these air bases at night. In the Rostov region, a missile fell near the village of Voshnoy, says no reports, 7 kilometers west of Bataisk. Reports say the missile was headed for the military base but was shot down by air defenses. Later, it was clarified that the explosion was caused by a Russian air defense missile that detonated during launch. Okay, so a couple of things on this. As in, there are a couple of incidences here and incidents here. English, so tough. And they are separate. Now, what we might have here is an air defense system, something like an S-300, exploding. If truly you have a missile that detonated during launch, if that detonated actually at in the launch tube, then goodbye S-300 launcher or whatever air defense it is. I'm hoping it'll be something as valuable as an S-300. Then we hear, and this is a separate incident, it appears. Russia also helped with a spectacular friendly fire incident in Rostov region, says Tim White. Locals openly report a catastrophic launch of an S-300 PM air defense missile at a military camp in Kuleshovka. A fleet of ambulances went back and forth to the site. Now, the images are different here. Um, I don't think this is the same. I mean, I haven't looked on the map where Bataisk is, 7 kilometers west of Bataisk, but they're talking of the village of Oloshnoi. It seems like it's a different place. And here, um, we have the destruction of an S-300 as claimed. Things just got a little bit more interesting. So Status 6, military and conflict news. Fire is underway in the area, the headquarters of the Russian 1536 Anti-Aircraft Missile Regiment, where the positions of S-300, S-400 launchers are located. This is Kuleshovka in Rostov Oblast, southern Russia. So that's what we were talking about with regards to the previous images here. Um, Status 6, a huge cloud of smoke seen rising near the city of Rostov-on-Don in southern Russia following reports of activity of Russian air defense in that area. So it looks like, one of the local Rostov channels says that an S-300, S-400 surface-to-air missile exploded during launch. The missile took off 100 meters and fell down 50 meters from the launcher. 4 ambulances headed to the scene. So it could well be that Russia lost in one day 2 S-300 or 2 surface-to-air missile launchers without the Ukrainians having to do anything. Apart from, I guess, send something that those launchers would be reacting against. In the Kherson direction, and I don't know if I'm going to double up on claims of this because I'm going to return to Kherson and some big strikes in the strike section, and it could be the same incident. So bear that in mind. But in the Kherson direction, the Ukrainian Defense Forces hit a large Russian field ammunition depot. And we can see here this guy talking about the destruction there. And I presume this is the same place that is being filmed after the destruction. Ukraine did some good work behind the lines in the Kherson region today. An invaders' camp was hit and ammo dumps exploded. The occupiers themselves confirm it in numerous videos. Here, everything burned down, including the generator, but not the toilet, says the narrator. So they got away with, at least saving the toilet. But importantly, ammo dumps and infrastructure of a base was taken out there. So good news for the Ukrainians in Kherson region. Then we have Ukrainian tactical aviation delivered an airstrike on a group of Russian drone operators who have been terrorizing civilians in the Kherson region. Their command post, located in the former public health building in occupied Oleksandr, also housed a battalion level command center. This could have been a very significant hit. Now, the Ukrainians really need to be hunting down the drone operators in the Kherson region because the drones are time and time again killing civilians in just horrific murder um, on a daily basis in Kherson. Kherson as a city is just a bit of a hellscape. Really, you're running the gauntlet. I think every time you go out there to some degree. Now, talking about drones, let's go to Magyar's birds. The famous Robert Brovdi and his unmanned systems forces grouping. This is a July report. So get ready for some stats, and there's some pretty impressive stats here. So it is numbers time. Right, 756 targets. That's the average per day. 166, he calls them worms. These are Russians. That's a daily average of Russians killed by the unmanned systems forces grouping, I believe. And he's equated this to being the average cost of what he calls a worm detox program, $911. So he says that it costs them $911 to take out a Russian person, based on 5,134 cases. So they are kind of working out what the. I mean, it sounds horrible, but essentially, war is a form. You've got war economics. This is. I don't want to devalue human life here in a way, but this is the way it is. Is that you want to be as efficient as possible because you've only got certain resources, particularly Ukraine, right? So you are trying to work out what the best way of dealing with the Russians is, and if you are working out that, hey, we can kill a single Russian for the price of $911, whereas if you're operating artillery units and each shell is worth whatever, each shell is worth way more than that, and it's taking you several shells to take out a single person, or maybe five shells to take out a small platoon or something like that, then actually, you know, unmanned systems forces are doing the most efficient work. So then, if you are Zelensky, you're like, right, we need to put way more funding into unmanned systems forces, and that's kind of how you've got to look at it. To destroy or strike 23,433 targets, including 5,134 personnel, the following drones were used in July: 29,172 FPV drones. So about 30,000 FPV drones in a month. 1,051 wedding. I don't know why they're called wedding Mavics. Is it because they're the sort of Mavics you have over a wedding to take photos from above? 530 night bombers and 655 interceptor wings. I guess they are. Is he talking about interceptor drones to take out other the fixed wing interceptor? Oh, the interceptor wings, because you do get interceptor drones that are quadcopters as well. So I don't know how to interpret that. Anyway, he says $1 to $100 is the cost to damage ratio against the enemy. So it cost for every dollar we spend, we do $100 of damage to the Russians. 2% is what the USF, Unmanned Systems Forces grouping personnel share relative to the total airfield strength. So The USF are 2% of the total army, yet they do 31.8% of all confirmed kills. Every third Russian soldier killed is killed by 2% of the Ukrainian armed forces. 36.3%, so over a third of all enemy targets, whether that be, whatever it may be, a vehicle, ammo depot, dugout, I guess. So over a third of that damage is done by 2% of the people. And actually, when you look at that, that's, a third of this category and over a third of this or third and a third of this category and this category. That's really, really impressive. 731 enemy recon wings destroyed over 31 days of July. So they've taken out 731 enemy reconnaissance drones. That is an increase of almost 30% in strikes. So I don't know whether this 30% increase applies to everything that we've just been talking about. 30% increase in strikes in July versus May. That's how I'd interpret it, rather than just the previous one of enemy recon wings. So that's amazing. A 30% increase in strikes in July versus May. Wow. Because they were already incredibly impressive, their stats. 1 to 604, that's a ratio of USF's groupings irrecoverable personnel losses to enemy losses. In other words, for every one USF personnel lost, they kill 604 Russians. What a ratio. This is one of the stats that I find most interesting. 39.6% is the average FPV strike efficiency. So 11,538 effective hits out of 29,172. So for every 100 drones they receive, 40 of them hit the target. 60 of them do not, or go wrong, or whatever. Pilot error, some issue with electronic warfare, gets shot down, has a mechanical failure. So actually, that is going to be an area they want to improve. But I remember looking at one stat earlier on in the war that was something like 17%. So that is an improvement on that stat, although I'm kind of plucking that out of my posterior. 60.3% is the average hit rate of night bombers. So night bombers are far more effective, and they hit much more often. They are usually, they are night bombers, so you're not losing those drones. They're not FPV drones, so they come back and then you set them up with more IEDs and whatnot. But 60.3% is their success rate. Over 75,000 munitions used. And then he says, and of course, Sochi, obviously, Sochi were not there, 14th USF Regiment. I don't know what that means. Sochi was hit the other night. I don't know what. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the reference is there. So this is incredibly impressive, and long may they be performing at this incredible rate. Right, okay. One of our followers put the 911 per invader number better than we ever could. If you've ever donated to the Ukrainian army, whether directly or through trusted Ukrainian volunteers, chances are you've already done two things: stopped an invader doing atrocities, saved an innocent life. That's how the math works. By the way, if you're supporting any Ukrainian units, now is a critical time to do so, because the situation near Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka is intense. The birds are fully equipped. We're good and don't raise funds at the moment. So, the Birds of Magyar particular group, well funded. He's a very good fundraiser, Robert Brovdy himself, now in charge of the whole USF grouping. And just if you're wondering about the Russians, here is a civilian cyclist with a suitcase full of their goods. Not their goods, their possessions, worldly possessions, trying to escape from Udachne, getting shot by a sniper and killed. I've blurred the critical moment, but some may still find it disturbing. Ukraine says it filmed a Russian sniper gunning down a civilian trying to leave Udachne in the Donetsk front. The man had all his possessions in a suitcase, murdered in an ambush. And then we have another example, just two examples of Russian war crimes today. Goodness me. Another blatant war crime in Zaporizhia region. Russia proudly now showing these sorts of videos as they deliberately strike firefighters in Heli. Um, we must not reward terrorism. We must punish war criminals, or never complain when it happens again and again. So here we have a fire truck being struck. And obviously, it's a fire truck, and it's an FPV drone that knows what it is and is destroying that fire truck, and then they publish it. So, if that's a mistake and you're like, oh yeah, we didn't mean to hit that, we thought it was a Kamaz truck or something, then you would not publish that on the internet. But you've got firefighters hanging out behind the fire truck there, and then the fire truck, and then you go and release that on the socials. So, these guys, they are proud of their war crimes. Right, moving on to distance strikes now. And here we have 45 attack drones being sent into Ukrainian airspace, and 36 was shot down. That's about an 80. That's an 80% interception rate. But it doesn't include obviously guided glide bombs, as Tim White says here, and they were doing quite a lot of damage over the last 24 hours. I was going to wonder what the drone. I have a feeling the drone numbers have dropped off somewhat. And I think that is borne out here by, if I take my head away from here, by these stats. As you can see, we have a slight tailing off the blue, getting slightly shallower right at this end, and there's a gap here of the orange entries to this graph. So each day is well, if there are drones that are sent into Ukraine that are intercepted, that features as an orange bar here. And the higher the bars, the more drones that sent in. And we had some nights of insane drone attacks where 700 drones were sent in, weren't they, at one point recently? And I don't think we have seen quite so many recently. And I am speculating that the Ukrainians have possibly hit some drone component manufacturing facilities over the last few weeks, over the last month, in attempting to stop the production of drones rather than go for yellow booger and take out that. Maybe it's too difficult to do lasting damage to yellow booger. Can they hit some of the supply chain? Can they hit some of the storage depots of these drones? And they've, for example, the other night, uh, what is it? The Primorska Aktarsk, or whatever, the airbase that fires launches these Shahed drones, one of the main ones, was hit, thought to have hit storage of the drones as well. You know, is that is this a case of the Russians firing fewer drones at the moment than we were seeing in that particularly bad patch, or had they just massively stockpiled? And were they kind of telling fibs about how many drones they could produce on a daily basis? I don't know. There are lots of theories we could come up with, but it seems to me like we are not seeing the massive numbers that we were, say, a month ago plus, and that's a good thing. What was hit last night? Well, one of the main ones people are talking about is in Odessa region. And you can see this. These people looking at this are looking from Romania, I believe, across the Danube River at I think it's a gas, uh, destroying production equipment, gas facility in Odessa region was hit. The blaze was so intense it was visible from Romania. About 2,500 customers were left without gas. Massive fire in the area of Olivka, located on the Danube River in Ukraine's Odessa Oblast, following Russian attack with Shahid type drones. Gunfire can be heard in the background as people watch the flames there. So that's one of the main successes for the Russians. Then there was quite a lot of activity. There has been quite a bit of activity recently with guided glide bombs. 15 minutes of hell at 6 a.m. this morning saw 2 people killed in Zaporizhia, says Tim White. Russia dropped 4 aerial bombs on a recreation center just as early birds were up and about. 12 others been injured, including 2 children. Now, no doubt Russia will claim troops were staying there, but there was no reporting delay. Photos appeared almost instantly. So if there are troops staying at a place, quite often you get in both cases, you, one side might say we've hit this, I don't know, school or recreation centre or something that 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 is thought that troops would be staying at, and then it would take some hours. You clear away the um, the soldiers that might have been billeting there, or their bodies, or whatever, and then you release photos showing that look, you've hit a school or a recreation center. And if the photos and images, videos come out almost immediately, then you know it's genuinely a recreation center, and that it wasn't being used as places often are to billet um, soldiers. So no doubt Russia would claim troops were staying here, but there was no reporting delay. Photos appeared almost instantly. A security guard who survived says, quote, there were families with children and friends here, 20 adults and 3 children. The genuine recreation center that people were staying at, civilians, that was hit with guided glide bombs. War crime yet again. Third one today. Um, so Russia dropped aerial bombs on a resort facility in Zaporizhia region this morning. Two people killed and 12 more injured, including 4 children. Last night, Russia attacked power grids in Dnipropetrovsk region, targeted people with drone-dropped explosives in Kherson. Again, Kherson there. Russia attacked and hit private homes in Kharkiv and Donetsk regions. These attacks won't make headlines as such. News from Ukraine have become the usual. Russia attacks Ukraine every day, killing people, destroying homes, and ruining businesses, says Anton Gerashenko. Absolutely on point there. Russia attacked Kupiansk with airdrop bombs and more guided glide bombs. According to neighbors, 3 people are trapped under the rubble. They have been sheltering in the basement of a destroyed apartment building. So that was yesterday. Yes, so uh, yeah, guided glide bombs are still a hell of a problem, obviously. Russia struck a hardened aircraft shelter at Starokonstantiniv air base with a Kinjal a day ago. So a single Kinjal, if you remember, was sent by the Russians a couple of nights ago at Starokonstantiniv air base in Khmelnytsky Oblast over in the west of Ukraine. That air base gets hit so regularly or gets targeted so regularly. I think you'll find it probably has some of the best air defense around there. They almost certainly got a Patriot system now, I would have thought, or SAMT or something, to protect against ballistics, because ballistic missiles do routinely get sent at Starokonstantiniv. It's thought that that's where the F-16s are going to be. It certainly was where was it the Su-24s with the Storm Shadows and cruise missiles were taking off from. So it's been routinely targeted. It's unknown what the extent of damage is, but the missile hit within the hangar's area. It's unknown whether a fighter jet was inside or not. The airbase has multiple F-16s. The red circle is where there is a visible hit via satellite imagery. Obviously, not in this image, though. Sometimes you're not allowed to publish certain resolution bits of imagery. There's publishing rules and copyrights and whatnot. But the claim is that one of those bunkers has taken a hit. The question is whether that would have resulted in the destruction or damage of a plane. Now, this happened yesterday, and we hear this on a daily basis. It's just from sources like N-Strike and Visiono and whatnot. Big news at this moment. Ukrainian drones are conducting massive attacks across several regions in Russia, including Bryansk, Voronezh, Smolensk, Tula, Kaluga, Tver, Oryol, Rostov, and Krasnodar. Powerful explosions have been reported in some cities, and Russian air defense systems are actively operating. So this was earlier in the evening, and then a second wave. At this moment, a second wave of Ukrainian drones is carrying out massive attacks on southeastern and southern regions of Russia, as well as Russian military installations located on the Crimean Peninsula. And yet we hear very little. And this is what I've talked about previously. I don't know whether the Ukrainians uh, have a challenge of getting through Russian air defenses, whether Russian air defenses are becoming better at intercepting these drones. I mean, the Uti drones aren't particularly difficult to shoot down. They're preferred a one-way attack drone. Um, but Russia's just obviously a huge country. Uh, so that could be one reason that we're not hearing an awful lot. It could just be that battle damage assessment is hard to come by, that um, the Russians are good at OPSEC, at closing down uploads to social media, but that doesn't always happen. Like quite often, we've been seeing, like for example, with the uh, oil refineries and depots have been hit recently. There's no problem with footage coming out there. So I don't know why there's not a lot of evidence of any of these strikes landing. Russians write that Ukraine has launched many naval drones as well, and that was yesterday evening too. So again, no news of those either. Tonight, what we do hear is that Tatsinskaya railway station was hit for the second consecutive night. Many pictures and videos of flames in the town, but it's not clear if the station or rail infrastructure has been hit. In this clip, the man at the end shouts, "The same house." So that railway station was hit, again last night, but I don't know that too much damage was done to it. Russia says 4 drones were shot down over Rostov region. Local Telegram channels claims all fires in Tatsinskaya have been already extinguished. There is an image of this one is one, but that's a tree that's on fire there. So I don't think much damage was done to Tatsinskaya, to be honest. For the second time, drones have attacked the Tatsinskaya railway station, says Wall Translated. In Russia's Rostov region, after the strike, locals filmed a large fire at the site. Meanwhile, Russia's Ministry of Defense claimed that 51 drones were shot down over Russia and the annexed Crimea. Um, no real news outside of this and a few others we're going to go to in a second. Ukrainian drones targeted the same railway station on consecutive nights while also striking an oil depot in Bryansk. We'll come to that just after this one. So this is also Bryansk, but it's not an oil depot. It's uh, metal structures and processing equipment plant in Bryansk that saw the brunt of a drone attack. And yeah, it's the JSC workshop plant of metal structures and technological equipment. So obviously, it's part of the military industrial complex taken out in Bryansk there. Then there was fire coming from an oil depot in Bryansk following a drone strike there. Don't know of any serious sort of BDA coming from there other than smoke in the sky. Um, and then we hear of, and this was this morning, massive strikes on Kherson region. Now, was this part of those fires that we saw previously? Strike on the base and ammo dump and whatnot? I don't know. This could be another strike, as this was from this morning. Uh, so it could be that Kherson is seeing quite a bit of activity at the moment. And then we have here someone talking about this strike, same video footage. A Russian soldier photographs the aftermath of strikes on Russian positions in the Kherson direction. Quote, "These are the fires after the strikes. Everything in the forest is burning. There, our boys are burning. They are suffocating in the smoke. Equipment is burning. Ammunition is exploding. Detonation. Everything is very sad." And more images from there. Some pretty heavy fires, as you can see. But I don't know if that's the same um, strike as we saw earlier. Right, moving on to other bits and pieces. I said this is going to be a long one. Let's try and rip through this. So, Russia asks Ethiopia to lease passenger airplanes. This isn't the first country that they've asked, and it doesn't mean that Ethiopia will agree. In fact, we now hear that Ethiopia has not agreed to this. But it does show that the Russian aviation industry is desperate. They want to lease planes off Ethiopian airlines, airliners. Wow, just they are in a lot of trouble. The Russian aviation industry, the largest cement producer in Russia, is switching to a 4-day work week. We've seen this from 4 different vehicle producers going down to 4-day working weeks. Now, a cement producer, and of course, that's due to a record drop in demand of the domestic market and an increase in the share of imported cement. So, I say, of course, I haven't actually reported too much on this, but the uh, uh, you know people buying new apartments and uh, new building projects have absolutely plummeted in number. Just they're having a terrible time with property in Russia at the moment. So yeah, that's going to have an effect on cement production and going to a 4-day working week. Again, it's a sort of canary in a coal mine. There are lots of canaries, and they are all dying at the moment. Earlier, leading Russian automakers switched to a shortened schedule. Okay, so then uh, Tim White says, on its own, this isn't massive, but it is significant. So who else has gone to a reduced work schedule? Well, the Russian railways are ordering staff to take 2 days off a month of unpaid leave. It's not a huge deal, but 2 days in 20 to 23 work days means almost a 10% drop in income. This then cuts consumer spending, causing a further downturn in the economy. It's quite incredible. So to furlough your staff, unpaid furlough by the looks of it, on the Russian railways, which is again, a good indicator of, well, if you're talking about loading, that's a good economic indicator. But movement of people, you move around more if you have money, if you've got economic activity, and you generally don't move if you want to save money, because every time you leave the house, let's face it, you're spending money these days. So yeah, this is another really bad sign for the Russian economy. Russia's oil and gas revenues fall for the third consecutive month. Gazprom, Russia's state-owned gas giant, has seen its exports to Europe hit lows not seen since the 1970s, according to the Moscow Times. Really bad news for them there. Russia reduced oil and gas revenues by 27% in July. The indicator decreased to 787.3 billion rubles against 1,079.3 billion rubles a year earlier. Russia's oil and gas revenues, therefore, that to fall 5% is a problem, right? But to fall 27, almost 30% reduction in oil and gas revenues compared to last year that's pretty problematic. And then put on top of this, I didn't realize that the 18th sanctions package that the EU had put in place has still not yet been implemented. So these are large, complex swathes of economic activity and domains that you're going to be looking at if you're the EU developing a sanctions package, and it takes a lot of time to put these things in place. So the 18th sanctions package against Russia, approved on July the 18th, will come into force by the end of this week. So then all of those woes that the Russian economy has is going to be made at least somewhat worse by the huge, what was supposed to be like one of the most heavy, one of the heaviest sanctions packages that the EU had put together. So, wow. Deputy Chief Spokesman Ariana Podesta has said from the European Commission that the Commission is now fully focused on enforcing already adopted sanctions. And that's really important. It's not just about putting sanctions on, but it's about making sure they're adhered to, making sure that they're being monitored, that there are no loopholes, so on and so forth. It's a kind of game of whack-a-mole. Now, all that in taken into account, we see Trump again, rhetoric changing. And I want to do a little video on this. I don't know if I have time today. His economy stinks, is what Trump has said. Falling oil prices could force Putin to end the war, Trump says. It's a real check. I wonder whether he has suddenly found himself being given information not from Elon Musk and David Sachs and people, but he's actually getting information from his own intelligence services finally. They're finally getting through to him. Because you might think it's obvious that the president will get information from his intelligence services, but we know that they struggled to get that through to him. He doesn't take intelligence briefings. It's a fight as to which department and which people can access Trump. And if he's surrounded by a coterie of yes men obsequiously giving, well, not even yes men, with their own agenda, like Project 2025 men that are giving Trump all of his news. And if he used to get his news from Russia, like and that would filter through his people to him. But now I get a sense that he's getting information from different places. He's on the phone to Zelenskyy again, and Zelenskyy said, I gave him any information about what's been going on in Kiev, about the strikes and the blah, 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 blah. He is starting to get the information that he needs in order to make, garbage in, garbage out, in order to make decent decisions. And he's starting to think about making better decisions. Better information equals better decisions. Russian President Putin will stop killing people if you get the price of energy down another $10 a barrel. This is true. He's going to have no choice because his economy stinks. This is strong rhetoric from Trump, what we want to hear. But then you get typical Trump taco, rolling things back maybe here. Let's listen.
Do you still plan to follow through on your threat to impose 100% tariffs on all countries that purchase Russian energy, including China?
Well, I never said a percentage, but we'll be doing quite a bit of that. We'll see what happens over the next fairly short period of time.
that cuts off there. But you did. The idea is you did say a percentage. You literally said 100%. And this is a problem: is that Trump lies through his teeth the entire time, denies saying things, says things that are just complete nonsense, like I'm going to reduce the cost of prescription drugs by 1,500%. What, you're going to pay people to take them? It literally makes no sense. But he doesn't get corrected. Like, he said that now like 5, 6 different times. He said that. It's like someone around him needs to say, you can't reduce prescription drug prices by more than 100%, because if you reduce them by 100%, they're free. And if it goes over 100%, you're paying people to take those drugs. So stop saying you are going to reduce prescription drug prices by more than 30%. That's amazing. We're actually going to do it by 1,500%. That's ridiculous. Why is no one around him saying this? So he just says nonsense the whole time, and he's not corrected. And then he says things, and then he claims he didn't say them. And it's like, but you did say them. We've got it on camera. You said you were going to introduce 100% tariffs on all countries that were buying Russian energy. No, I didn't. I didn't say that. I didn't. Never said a percentage. But we'll. So you're thinking, oh my God, here we go, already backing down. So we'll have to see. Now today, Steve Witkoff, Trump's golfing buddy and real estate mogul, has been walking around Moscow with Kirill Dmitriev. Then he met Putin, where they've already had a meeting for about 3 hours, uh, where Yuri Ushakov was there. I wonder if it's Witkoff on his own again, or whether the Americans have learnt, because last time he went in without a translator, used a Kremlin translator, and came out with nothing of use. So, you're sending a novice, you're sending a hen into a fox den here. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, we'll wait to see what comes out of that 3-hour meeting. Zelensky, as I mentioned, had a phone call with Trump. He said the conversation was productive, thanked the president for his efforts towards a just and lasting peace. Positions of Ukraine and US have been coordinated. So, there is I think, an improvement in the relationship there. Trump has been fully informed about Russian strikes on Kyiv and other places in Ukraine. Sanctions against Russia were discussed, as well as European aid and bilateral defense cooperation between Ukraine and the US. China has declared that the process of resolving Russia's war against Ukraine has reached a critical moment. The Chinese foreign minister discussed the conflict with Brazil's presidential aide, noting that Russia and Ukraine have already started talks, an important step forward. Wow. So there could well be discussions going on between Ukraine and Russia. Now, maybe indicating a change of American positioning here. US is to auction a $300 million Russian oligarch yacht seized after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Amadea yacht, valued at more than $300 million, was seized from sanctioned Kremlin-linked Russian billionaire Suleiman Kerimov in April 2022. That's obviously been sitting there doing nothing. That's going to be sold off. I would be very reluctant to buy one of these yachts if I had the money, because I'd be thinking there's going to be a very annoyed Russian oligarch that's going to want to sabotage my yacht. He's like, that's my yacht. But anyway, hopefully that money can then be put towards supporting Ukraine. More than 20 real estate properties in Vienna may be auctioned off in favor of Ukraine's state-owned gas company Naftogaz. The company secured compensation for losses caused by Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, according to the Austrian newspaper Der Standard. So there's this court case that's happened, and now they are getting some money from Russian, in this case, real estate properties in Vienna. So that's excellent as well. Really good news. We've got this. I talked about Azealia Banks recently, female version of Kanye. She's this American rapper that's gone full on Putin. I'm so sorry, she said publicly. I'm so sorry. I'm a Putin apologist, but I love Russia, all caps. And Vladimir Putin is literally one of my favorite supervillains. I miss you guys. Like, what is going? Like, yeah, I don't know what to do with that. So Zelensky, we must remember that Zelensky is very different from Putin, and he's still going and meeting people on the front lines. This is in Vovchansk, and I didn't report this the other day, but actually this is really important. Post here from Konstantin Sonin. It says, for Zelensky, visiting front lines is such a routine that we stopped realizing how incredible this is. Since Napoleonic Wars, I think a head of state has never spent so much time visiting active battlefields where soldiers die every day. It requires personal courage, of course, but also requires incredible faith in his troops and officers. Well done. It is really good. So yeah, let's celebrate that and commend him for doing so. And I'm going to leave you with this. This is the Edinburgh Tattoo, military tattoo. This is like a military festival that takes place in Edinburgh every year. I've saw it myself once. My dad was in the Navy. My mum was in the Navy actually before she had kids. Um, you get like field gun crews and all sorts going on. I've seen it in Wembley Arena actually when it came to Wembley, but it's usually up in Edinburgh. And here, the Ukrainian naval band with the Ukrainian colours there were present, and that's fantastic. I watched this yesterday and I had tears in my eyes. Just so you might wonder what they're doing now. Of course, the Navy are being trained up probably in Britain and on like the mine hunters and whatnot. So a lot of the Ukrainian Navy is not going to be in Ukraine actively. Um, the importance of this is huge. Like, this is soft power, isn't it? So this is a PR exercise where you've got thousands of people watching this. You've got the Ukrainian colors. This is a kind of, we are on Ukraine's side. Ukraine are with us. We are together, and everyone's going to be feeling that in that. And there'll be thousands of people there, and that whose opinions of Ukraine will be either consolidated or adjusted. And I think that stuff like that is important. It really is. So I'm going to leave you on that positive note. It's been a long one. Sorry about that. Anyway, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.